I watched my stepsister's face drain of color as I settled into the CEO's chair, my nameplate gleaming under the conference room lights. Maya Chen, Chief Executive Officer. Her fingers trembled around her presentation notes, the same notes I'd helped her prepare in my previous life, right before she'd stolen everything from me. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady as I addressed the executive team. "As you know, I've spent the last 6 months restructuring our parent company's operations in Singapore. Now that I'm back to lead the North American division, I'm looking forward to working with each of you." My eyes lingered on Maya for just a moment longer than necessary. "Especially with our creative director. I've heard such interesting things about your journey with the company." The lie was transparent to anyone paying attention. Maya hadn't journeyed anywhere. She'd crawled her way up by plagiarizing my ideas, sleeping with my ex-boyfriend who was the former creative director, and systematically destroying every opportunity I'd ever had, but that was in another lifetime, literally. Maya swallowed hard, her Adam's apple bobbing visibly. She knew. Somehow, she knew that I remembered everything. "Miss Chen," she managed, her voice cracking, I didn't realize you were the new CEO. The announcement said the position would be filled by someone from our Singapore office. That was me. I've been using my mother's maiden name there, Lin. But I decided to reclaim my father's name now that I'm home." I smiled, and it wasn't kind. After all, Chen is the family name. Shouldn't I use it? The other executives shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. They didn't know that Maya Chen was my stepsister, that we'd grown up in the same house where she'd been the golden child and I'd been the invisible one. They didn't know that in my first life I died at 28 in a car accident on my way to confront her about stealing my career, my relationship, my entire existence. They certainly didn't know that I'd woken up on my 22nd birthday 6 years in the past, with all my memories intact and a burning desire for revenge. The morning I woke up in my old bedroom, I'd thought I was dreaming. The pale yellow walls I'd painted over years ago. The creaky twin bed I'd replaced when I moved out. The acceptance letter from McKinsey & Company sitting on my desk, still crisp and new, dated for a start date 6 months away. My heart had hammered in my chest as I'd grabbed my phone. March 15th, 2018. 6 years before the car accident. 6 years before everything fell apart. I'd stumbled to the bathroom and stared at my face in the mirror. 22 years old again. The dark circles under my eyes were lighter. The permanent stress lines between my brows hadn't formed yet. I looked hopeful. I looked naive. I'd looked like someone who had no idea her entire life was about to be systematically destroyed by her own family. The memories had crashed over me in waves. Every betrayal, every manipulation, every time my stepmother Margaret had chosen Maya over me. Every instance where my weak-willed father had looked the other way as his new wife's daughter consumed everything meant for his own child. It had started small in my first life. Maya borrowing my clothes and returning them ruined. Margaret forgetting to tell me about family dinners. My father canceling our weekly lunches because Maya needed help with something. Small cuts that bled me dry over years, but the real devastation had come later when I'd started building my career. I'd earned the McKinsey position through brutal hard work. 4 years of perfect grades at Wharton, 3 summers of prestigious internships, hundreds of hours networking and preparing. The offer letter had represented everything I'd sacrificed for. My ticket out of my family's toxic dynamic. My proof that I was worth something. Maya had been a mediocre student at a mediocre state school, coasting on her mother's indulgence and my father's money. She'd majored in communications because it required the least effort, partied her way through 4 years, and graduated with no prospects and no plan. So she'd simply taken mine. I remembered coming home one afternoon to find Maya at my desk, my laptop open, my McKinsey offer letter in her hands. She'd looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes and said, "Is this real? Did you really get into McKinsey?" Foolish, naive version of me had been proud, had smiled and nodded, had launched into an explanation of the interview process, the case studies, the networking events I'd attended. Maya had listened with rapt attention, asking question after question. What had they asked? How had I prepared? What examples had I used? What was my start date? Who was my contact person? I'd told her everything because she was my sister, and I'd still believed somewhere deep down that family meant something. 2 weeks later, I'd received an email from McKinsey HR. There had been a mix-up with their records. They'd actually extended the offer to Maya Chen, not me. They apologized profusely for the confusion. The position was no longer available, and I'd been devastated, confused. I'd called the HR representative, tried to explain, but Maya had already started. She'd shown up on my start date with my prepared materials, using the case study examples I'd walked her through. She'd even somehow gotten access to my laptop and stolen my entire research folder. When I'd confronted her, she'd cried to Margaret and my father, said I was jealous, said I was trying to sabotage her first real job because I couldn't stand seeing her succeed. And they'd believed her. Of course they had. My father had sat me down and told me I was being uncharacteristically petty, that I should be happy for my sister, that there would be other opportunities for me. There hadn't been. Because once Maya had her foot in the door at McKinsey, she'd made sure every door slammed shut for me. She'd sabotaged my job applications by using our shared last name to create confusion. She'd spread rumors in my network that I was difficult to work with, unstable, a pathological liar who claimed credit for others' work. Meanwhile, she'd dated her way up the ladder, eventually landing my ex-boyfriend Marcus Webb, who'd just been promoted to creative director at Pinnacle Corp, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the city. She'd ridden his coattails into a position there, all while slowly stealing my original ideas that I'd stupidly documented on our shared family cloud storage. By the time I was 28 in my first life, I'd been working a series of dead-end admin jobs, my Wharton degree gathering dust, my confidence shattered. Maya had been thriving as Pinnacle's rising star in their creative department, engaged to Marcus, living in a penthouse I could never afford. The night I died, I'd finally found proof. Proof that she'd impersonated me to steal the McKinsey position. Proof that she'd been systematically destroying my job prospects for 6 years. Proof that every major campaign she'd claimed credit for at Pinnacle had been based on concepts I'd written in what I'd thought was a private journal. I'd been driving to confront her, evidence in hand, when a truck had run a red light. The impact had been instant. The darkness had been complete. And then I'd woken up, on my 22nd birthday, 6 years in the past, with rage burning in my chest and knowledge in my mind. Standing in that bathroom on March 15th, 2018, staring at my young face, I'd made a decision. This time, I wouldn't be the victim, and this time, I would use what I knew to bury them all. The first thing I'd done was move my McKinsey files to a private cloud storage account with encryption. The second was to set up hidden cameras in my room. The third was to start documenting everything, every conversation, every email, every interaction with Maya and my family. When Maya had come into my room that afternoon, right on schedule, and asked about McKinsey, I'd been ready. "Oh, it's amazing," I'd gushed, playing the naive younger version of myself. The interview was so intense. They asked about market sizing, profitability frameworks, all of it. "Tell me everything," Maya had breathed, her eyes glinting with that familiar predatory interest I now recognized for what it was. So I'd told her. But this time, I'd fed her false information. Wrong frameworks, incorrect case study approaches, bad examples that would make her look incompetent. I'd watched her write it all down, her tongue poking out slightly as she concentrated. She'd thought she was so clever, stealing my life path right out from under me. She'd had no idea she was walking directly into a trap. When the day came for my supposed McKinsey start date, I'd watched Maya prepare with my father's expensive briefcase, wearing the designer suit Margaret had bought for her first day, carrying notes filled with everything I'd told her. I'd wished her luck with a smile, and then I'd gone to my own interview at Pinnacle Corp's Singapore office. I'd spent my first life's 6 years watching Marcus and Maya talk about Pinnacle. I'd heard every story about their corporate culture, their hiring practices, their expansion plans. I'd known they were opening a Singapore office and looking for talented graduates to join their international rotation program. So I'd applied under my mother's maiden name, Lynn. Different last name, same credentials. I'd prepared using actual good frameworks and my real capabilities, not the garbage I'd fed Maya. 3 days after Maya started at McKinsey with her stolen opportunity and false preparation, She'd been fired for gross incompetence. Apparently, telling a senior partner that market sizing is just guessing with math wasn't the brilliant insight she'd thought it was. By then, I was on a plane to Singapore, a signed contract in my bag and a plan in my heart. The next 6 years had been calculated, while Maya floundered in the US, burning through the last of my father's goodwill and Margaret's connections. I'd built an empire in Asia. The Singapore office had been a startup within a startup, and I'd been there from day one. I'd worked 100-hour weeks. I'd networked ruthlessly. I'd pitched ideas I'd spent my first life developing. Most importantly, I'd documented everything I'd created. Detailed records, timestamps, witnesses. I'd learned that lesson the hard way in my first life. Pinnacle Singapore had exploded under my leadership. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted to regional director. Within 4, I was vice president of Asia Pacific operations. I'd overseen a 300% revenue increase, landed contracts with every major tech company in the region, and built a reputation as a strategic genius. Meanwhile, back in the States, Maya had finally landed at Pinnacle's North American office through Marcus. I'd watched from afar through the company's internal networks, my jaw clenched as she'd wormed her way into the creative department. But this time, I'd been prepared. Every idea she'd tried to steal was already filed in Pinnacle's international database with my name on it, dated years earlier. Every concept she'd attempted to plagiarize was already being executed in my division with full documentation of its origin. When she'd submitted her first original campaign, a rebranding strategy for a major client, the system had flagged it immediately as derivative of my work from 2 years prior. The algorithms I'd personally helped develop had caught her plagiarism within minutes. She'd talked her way out of it, claimed coincidence, blamed the similarity on industry trends. Marcus, besotted with her in this timeline as he'd been in the last, had protected her. So I'd waited, and worked, and planned. I'd known the North American CEO position was opening up. I'd known because in my first life, Maya and Marcus had talked about it constantly, scheming about how Marcus might land it. I'd known the board was looking for someone with international experience, someone who could bring the Asia market expertise to North America. I'd positioned myself perfectly, and when the board had approached me 6 months ago, I'd said yes with a smile. Now, watching Maya squirm in her seat as I led my first executive meeting, I felt something fierce and satisfied bloom in my chest. "Let's go around the table," I said pleasantly. "I want to hear from each department head about current projects and challenges. Marcus, why don't you start? I understand the creative department has been busy." Marcus Webb looked older than I remembered, the boyish charm I'd once found attractive, now reading as sleazy. He'd been my boyfriend in my first life before Maya had stolen him. In this timeline, I'd never given him the chance. I'd watched from Singapore as he and Maya had gotten together, their relationship even more toxic than it had been in my previous life. "Of course," Marcus said, his confidence forced. "We've been working on the Tecton rebranding campaign. Maya's been leading the creative vision." "Actually," I interrupted smoothly, "I'd like to hear from Maya directly. After all, she is the creative director. Surely she can speak to her own work?" Maya's face went pale. She knew, she had to know, that I had access to every file, every submission, every piece of work she'd ever claimed as her own. The timestamps would show everything. Yes, of course," she stammered. "The Tecton campaign is focused on modernizing their brand identity while maintaining core values. We're proposing a complete visual overhaul with an emphasis on dynamic typography and color psychology, with an emphasis on tech-forward minimalism," I finished. "Yes, I'm familiar with that approach. I pioneered it for the Samsung contract in Singapore 3 years ago. It's in the company database if anyone wants to check." The room went silent. Maya's hands were shaking now. I developed this independently." "I'm sure you did," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's remarkable how often great minds think alike. Still, we'll need to make sure all your work is properly vetted going forward. I'd hate for any misunderstandings about intellectual property to arise." I let that hang in the air for a moment before moving on. "Marcus, I've also been reviewing your department's performance metrics. I noticed there's been a significant decline in approval ratings for campaigns over the past 18 months. Nearly 40% of your pitches have been rejected by clients." That's well below company standards. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The market has been challenging. Funny because our Asia division has maintained a 92% approval rating in the same period. Different markets, of course, but one has to wonder about the leadership disparity. I smiled. We'll be conducting a full department review over the next quarter. I want to understand where the problems lie. The message was clear. I was coming for them both. The meeting ended with Maya practically running from the room. I watched her go with satisfaction, then turned my attention to the real work ahead. Revenge was satisfying, but it was also strategic. I needed to dismantle their influence completely, and that meant building my own power base. Over the next weeks, I worked methodically. I met with every department head individually, building relationships and identifying allies. I discovered what I'd suspected. Maya and Marcus had made enemies throughout the company. Their plagiarism and favoritism hadn't gone unnoticed. It had just gone unpunished because the previous CEO had been friends with Marcus. I changed that immediately, and I implemented new transparency protocols for creative work. Every campaign now required full documentation of the ideation process with timestamps and version controls. It was framed as protecting intellectual property and encouraging collaboration. But everyone knew what it really meant. No more stealing. Maya's work dried up almost immediately. Without the ability to plagiarize from the shared drives or take credit for her team's ideas, she produced nothing of value. Her campaigns were derivative, uninspired, flat. Within a month, I had enough documentation to bring formal plagiarism charges against her, not just for my work, but for the work of 3 other team members she'd stolen from over the years. People who'd been too afraid of Marcus's protection to speak up before. I called her into my office on a Thursday afternoon. She entered like a prisoner walking to execution, her designer clothes hanging loose on a frame that had visibly lost weight. The dark circles under her eyes matched the ones I'd had in my first life, when she'd been destroying me. "Sit down, Maya," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. She sat, her hands clasped in her lap. "You remember, don't you?" she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "Remember what?" "Everything. The McKinsey job. You remember? And this is revenge." For a moment, I considered denying it. Playing innocent. But what was the point? She already knew. "Yes," I said simply. "I remember everything. I remember you stealing my job interview. I remember you destroying my career. I remember 6 years of watching you take credit for my work while I couldn't even get a call back for an entry-level position. I remember dying on my way to confront you about it." Her eyes widened. "Dying?" "Car accident, March 15th, 2024. I had finally gathered enough evidence to prove what you'd done, and I was coming to your penthouse to confront you. A truck ran a red light." I smiled without humor. "And then I woke up on March 15th, 2018. Funny how the universe works." Maya was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean, it wasn't supposed to." "You didn't mean what? To destroy my entire life? To steal every opportunity I'd earned? To turn our parents against me?" My voice hardened. "No, Maya, you meant every bit of it. You just didn't think you'd ever face consequences." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Once, the sound of her crying would have made me feel guilty. Would have made me want to comfort her, to play the role of supportive older sister that I'd been manipulated into for so many years, and now it just sounded like justice. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, sliding a folder across the desk. "This contains documentation of 14 instances of plagiarism within this company. Your work, copied from mine, and from other team members. The timestamps are irrefutable. The evidence is damning." She looked up, mascara running down her face. "You're firing me." "No," I said. "I'm giving you a choice." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "Option 1. I present this evidence to the board. You're fired for cause, which means no severance, no references, and a permanent black mark on your record. I'll also make sure this information reaches every major company in the industry. Your career is over." She whimpered. "Option 2, you resign, effective immediately. You sign a comprehensive NDA about your time here and your reasons for leaving. I'll provide a neutral reference that confirms your employment dates and nothing more. You walk away with your dignity, if not your career." That's not a choice. she whispered. It's more of a choice than you ever gave me, I said flatly. You have until 5 p.m. today to decide. If you're still employed by this company tomorrow, I go to the board with everything. She stood on shaking legs, the folder clutched to her chest. At the door, she turned back. What about Marcus? What about him? Are you going to destroy him too? I smiled. Marcus will destroy himself. He always does. I just need to give him enough rope. Maya resigned that afternoon. Her desk was cleaned out by 4:30 p.m., her access badges turned in, her nameplate removed from her office door. I watched through my office window as she carried a small cardboard box to her car. Her shoulders hunched against the rain that had started falling, and I felt nothing. Marcus predictably came storming into my office an hour later. What the hell did you do? He demanded, slamming my door behind him. Maya just quit. She won't tell me why, she won't explain, she's just gone. I looked up from my laptop, my expression neutral. Miss Chen made a decision about her career path. I'm not at liberty to discuss personnel matters. Don't give me that corporate bullshit. You did something. You threatened her, didn't you? Did she say I threatened her? He faltered. No, but then I suggest you respect her decision and move on. I returned my attention to my screen, as should you. We need to discuss your department's restructuring. My department doesn't need restructuring. Your department is underperforming by every measurable metric. Approval ratings are down, client satisfaction is declining, and we've lost 3 major accounts in the past year alone. The board has authorized a complete review, and frankly, Marcus, the preliminary findings aren't favorable. His face went red. This is personal. This is about Maya or... His eyes narrowed. Wait, have we met before? Before you came back from Singapore? I kept my expression carefully neutral. I don't believe so. Why? It's just the way you look at me sometimes. Like you know something. He shook his head. Never mind, it's crazy. Perhaps you should take some time off, I suggested. Clear your head. Lord knows you'll need clarity for the department review hearings next month. He left without another word, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew his protection was gone. Without Maya to provide him with stolen ideas and the previous CEO to cover for his incompetence, he was exposed. I gave him 6 weeks. That's all it would take. The department review was brutal. I brought in external consultants, industry experts, and forensic analysts. Every campaign Marcus's department had run in the past 3 years was dissected, analyzed, and traced back to its origins. The pattern was damning. Nearly 60% of their original creative work could be traced to other sources. My work from Singapore, smaller competitor campaigns, even student portfolios from design schools. Maya had been their idea factory, and Maya had been a thief. Without her, Marcus's own inadequacy was impossible to hide. His campaigns were safe, boring, derivative. His leadership style was autocratic and toxic. His team members, finally free to speak honestly, reported years of credit stealing, intimidation, and favoritism. The board meeting where I presented my findings was somber. The creative department has been operating under systematically fraudulent practices for at least 3 years, I said, my presentation slides showing undeniable evidence. The financial impact on the company includes lost contracts, damaged reputation, and potential legal liability for intellectual property theft. I'm recommending immediate termination of the department head and a complete restructuring. The board members looked grim. Several of them had been Marcus's drinking buddies, his golf partners, but they couldn't argue with the evidence. The creative director position, one of the older board members said. Who would you recommend to fill it? I'd been waiting for this question. Actually, I'd like to propose something different. The traditional creative director role has proven vulnerable to the issues we've uncovered. Instead, I'm recommending we implement a collective leadership model with strong oversight and accountability measures. In other words, never again would one person have enough power to do what Maya and Marcus had done. The vote was unanimous. Marcus was fired the next day. Unlike Maya, he didn't go quietly. He threatened lawsuits, claimed discrimination, even tried to leak confidential information to the press. But I'd anticipated all of it. Every communication was documented, every claim was easily disproven. And when his lawyers saw the evidence of his department's plagiarism, they advised him to take the severance and disappear. He did eventually. But not before one final confrontation. He cornered me in the parking garage late one evening, 3 days before his official exit date. "You planned all of this," he said, his voice echoing in the concrete space. "This whole thing, coming back from Singapore, the restructuring, everything. You engineered it to destroy us." I didn't bother denying it. We were alone, and I had pepper spray in my bag and security on speed dial. "Yes. Why? What did we ever do to you?" The laugh that escaped me was sharp and bitter. "You really don't know, do you? You genuinely have no idea what you took from me." "I don't even know you," he protested. "Before you came back, I'd never even heard your name." "No," I agreed. "You hadn't. Because Maya made sure of that. Made sure that every opportunity I earned was redirected to her. Made sure my career was dead before it started. And you were so easy. So willing to believe her lies to help her steal, to use your position to protect her while she destroyed me." Understanding dawned slowly in his eyes. "You're Maya's sister. Stepsister, and yes. But that doesn't make sense. You were in Singapore for 6 years. How could she have—" "In another life," I said softly, "Maya stole a job interview from me, a position at McKinsey that I'd earned. She used my preparation, my examples, my entire strategy to take what was mine. And when she failed at that job because she was incompetent, she used our family connections and her manipulation skills to land positions she didn't deserve. Eventually, she landed here with you and spent years stealing creative work from me and others while you protected her. That's insane. You're talking about another life? I'm talking about what I remember. And whether you believe me or not doesn't matter. What matters is that in this life, this timeline, whatever you want to call it, I didn't let her steal my opportunity. I built my own path. I became powerful enough that when I came back, I could expose everything you both are, thieves and frauds." He took a step toward me, and I immediately pulled out my phone, finger hovering over the security contact. He stopped. "You're vindictive, cruel." "I'm fair," I corrected. "I gave Maya a choice. I gave you both more than you ever gave me. All I did was create a system where the truth couldn't be hidden anymore. If that destroyed you, it's because you were never as good as you pretended to be." He stared at me for a long moment, something like recognition flickering in his eyes. "In this other life, you remember, were we? Did you and I?" "No," I lied. "Because the girl who'd loved Marcus Webb had died in that car accident, and I refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd once mattered to me. You were nothing to me. You still are." I left him standing there in the garage, his entire world crumbling around him. I didn't look back. The restructuring of the creative department took 6 months. I brought in fresh talent, implemented strict oversight protocols, and rebuilt the team's culture from the ground up. By the end of the year, approval ratings were climbing, client satisfaction was at an all-time high, and Pinnacle Corp's North American division was finally living up to its potential. My father called me for the first time in 8 months on a Tuesday evening. "Vivian," he said, his voice stiff, "your stepmother and I would like to speak with you." About Maya, about what happened with her job." I felt that familiar burn of anger in my chest. "What about it?" "She's been struggling since she left Pinnacle. Can't seem to find work. She says—" He paused. "She says you blacklisted her, that you're preventing her from getting hired anywhere." "I've done no such thing," I said truthfully. "Maya's reputation is her own making. If companies are choosing not to hire her, perhaps she should consider why that might be." "She's family, Vivian." "So am I," I said quietly. "I'm your daughter, but you've never treated me like family, not when it mattered." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? How many times did you believe her over me? How many times did you let Margaret exclude me, diminish me, treat me like I was less than Maya? How many opportunities did I lose because you wouldn't stand up for me?" Silence on the other end. "I have a meeting," I said. "I need to go." "Vivian, wait." I hung up. It felt good. Margaret was next, showing up at my office unannounced 2 weeks later. Security called to warn me before letting her up. "There's a Margaret Chen here to see you. Says she's family?" "Send her up," I said, "but stay alert." Margaret swept into my office like she owned it, all designer clothes and expensive perfume. She'd aged since I'd last seen her in person. more gray in her carefully colored hair, deeper lines around her mouth. "Vivian," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "we need to talk about what you've done to Maya." "Hello, Margaret. I don't recall giving you an appointment." "This couldn't wait. My daughter is suffering because of your vendetta." "Your daughter is suffering because of her own choices. You forced her out of her job. You've blacklisted her across the industry. "I did none of those things," I interrupted. "Maya resigned of her own accord. Her professional reputation is the result of her professional behavior. If she's finding it difficult to secure employment, perhaps she should reflect on why that might be." Margaret's face flushed red. "You've always been jealous of her. Always. From the moment your father and I married, you couldn't stand that she was prettier, smarter, more charming." "Stop!" My voice cut through her tirade like ice. "I'm not that little girl anymore, Margaret. I'm not going to stand here and listen to you gaslight me about my own life." "Gaslight? I'm telling you the truth. The truth is that Maya is a plagiarist and a manipulator. The truth is that you enabled her for years, teaching her that she could take whatever she wanted from me without consequences. The truth is that you never cared about me, about my feelings, about my future. I was just an inconvenience in your new life with my father." Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to leave my office. You're not going to contact me again. You're not going to try to manipulate my father into guilting me. You're going to go home and tell Maya that she needs to take responsibility for her own life because I am done being her victim. You can't just—" "I can," I said. "And I will. Security will escort you out now. If you come back, I'll have a restraining order filed within the hour." I picked up my phone and called security. "Please escort Miss Chen from the building." 2 security guards appeared within a minute. Margaret looked between them and me, her face a mask of shock and fury. "Your father will hear about this," she hissed. "I'm sure he will," I said. "But I'm 30 years old, Margaret. I don't need his approval anymore, and frankly, I don't want his presence in my life if it comes with yours." She left sputtering threats and insults. I returned to work without a second thought. The final confrontation came on March 15th, 2024, exactly 6 years after I'd woken up with my second chance and the anniversary of my death in my first life. I'd arranged a charity gala for Pinnacle Corp, a fundraiser for scholarship programs in business and technology. It was a major event attended by industry leaders, press, and stakeholders. I'd known my family would be there. My father still had connections in the business world, and Margaret never missed a chance to network. I also knew Maya would try to crash it. She did, slipping past security with an old guest pass from her time at the company. I spotted her immediately, hovering near the bar in a dress that was too tight and makeup that was too heavy. She looked desperate. I could have had security remove her. Should have, probably. But I wanted this final confrontation. Needed it. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations on the company's successful year, smiling for photos, until I stood in front of her. "Maya," I said pleasantly, "I don't recall seeing your name on the guest list." She turned, and I saw the damage 6 years had done. She looked hollow, worn, older than her years. "I needed to talk to you." "Then make an appointment through my assistant." "Please," her voice broke. "Please, Vivian, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I've lost everything. My job, Marcus, my reputation. I can't even get an interview for entry-level positions. I need help." "You need help," I repeated. "The way I needed help 6 years ago? 7? 8? When you were systematically destroying my life? I didn't understand what I was doing." "You understood perfectly. You just didn't care." Tears streamed down her face, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just emptiness where sisterly affection should have been. "I can't forgive you," I said quietly, "and I can't help you. You made your choices, Maya. You chose to steal, to lie, to manipulate. You chose to take everything from me without a single moment of remorse. These are your consequences. But we're family?" "No," I interrupted. "We're not. We never were. Family doesn't destroy each other for personal gain. Family doesn't stand by while abuse happens. You and your mother and my father taught me that lesson very well." I started to walk away, then paused. There was one more thing I needed to say. In my first life, the one I remember but you don't, I died on this day, March 15th, 2024. I was driving to confront you with evidence of everything you'd stolen from me. I never got the chance. A truck hit my car and I died instantly. Her face went white. That can't be. I woke up 6 years in the past with a choice. Let you destroy me again or use what I knew to protect myself. I chose to survive, Maya. I chose to build a life where you couldn't hurt me. That's not revenge. That's self-preservation. But I didn't mean to. Yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. You just thought you'd never face consequences. I met her eyes directly. Goodbye, Maya. I hope you figure out how to be a better person. But you'll do it without me. I walked away and didn't look back. The gala was a tremendous success. We raised over $2 million for scholarships, secured 3 major new contracts, and cemented Pinnacle's reputation as an industry leader. I gave a speech about opportunity and merit, about supporting talent regardless of background, about building systems that reward hard work rather than nepotism. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father found me afterward near the end of the evening. He looked old, tired, diminished somehow. "Vivian," he said, "can we talk?" "I'm quite busy." "Please." Something in his voice made me pause. I gestured to a quiet corner away from the crowd. "I saw Maya," he said. "She told me some things about what happened at Pinnacle, about why she really left." "Did she tell you she was fired for plagiarism?" He flinched. "She said you had it out for her, that you fabricated evidence." The evidence was time-stamped and verified by external auditors. Maya stole work from me and from other team members for years. She was incompetent without material to plagiarize. And when I implemented accountability measures, she crumbled. "Why didn't you tell me?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Tell you? When would I have told you, Dad? During one of our weekly lunches that you constantly canceled? During family dinners I wasn't invited to? When you believed every lie Maya and Margaret told about me without even asking for my side? I didn't realize. Yes, you did. You just didn't care. It was easier to let Margaret run the family, to let Maya be the golden child, to let me fade into the background. I was just a reminder of Mom, and you didn't want that reminder." He looked stricken. "That's not true. I loved your mother." "Then you should have loved me. You should have protected me. You should have been my father." My voice broke slightly, and I hated myself for it. "But you weren't. So, I protected myself." "Is it too late?" he asked quietly, "to fix things between us?" I wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell him that some damage couldn't be repaired, some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. But looking at his face, really looking, I saw genuine remorse, genuine pain. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe, but it would require you to be honest about what you allowed to happen, about the choices you made, about choosing Margaret and Maya over your own daughter, over and over again." He nodded slowly. "I can do that. I can try." "Then try," I said. "But understand this. I don't need you anymore. I've built a life without you, without your support, without your approval. If you want to be part of it, you'll need to earn that privilege. And it starts with setting boundaries with Margaret and Maya." "I'm divorcing her," he said suddenly. "Margaret, I've filed the papers." I stared at him, genuinely shocked. "What?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Maya lost her job. About our family. About the way things have been. I started asking questions, looking into things." He met my eyes. "I found evidence that Margaret knew about Maya stealing your McKinsey interview." My blood ran cold. "What? Emails, messages. Margaret helped Maya impersonate you? She thought it would be funny that you'd never find out, that Maya deserved it more than you anyway." His voice was hollow. "I've been married to a woman who actively sabotaged my own daughter, who encouraged her daughter to destroy yours. I won't stay with someone like that." I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt nothing at all. "Thank you for telling me," I finally managed. "But it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't give me back the years I lost in my..." I caught myself. "The opportunities I lost." "I know," he said, "and I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I allowed to happen. And I'm sorry." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was something. Okay, I said, okay. 18 months after I became CEO, Pinnacle Corp announced record-breaking profits. Our North American division had become the company's highest-performing sector, outpacing even my own Asia division. The board voted me a generous bonus and an extended contract. I bought a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The same building Maya had lived in with Marcus in my first life. The same view she'd had while my life fell apart. The irony was delicious. I filled it with art and books, with comfortable furniture and soft lighting. I made it a home, something I'd never had with my family. I hosted dinner parties for friends and colleagues, people who valued me for my mind and my achievements, not for what they could take from me. My father and I had dinner once a month. It was awkward, stilted, but it was something. He was genuinely trying, attending therapy, working through his guilt. His divorce from Margaret had been ugly and expensive, but he seemed lighter without her. Maya, I heard through the grapevine, had moved back to her mother's house. She was working retail while trying to rebuild her reputation. I felt nothing when I heard that. No satisfaction, no guilt. She was simply irrelevant. Marcus had left the industry entirely, last I heard. Moved to another state, started selling insurance or something equally mundane. His LinkedIn profile was set to private. As for me, I was thriving. Not just professionally, but personally. I'd started dating again, carefully, cautiously, but with an openness I'd never had in my first life. I traveled for pleasure, not just business. I invested in causes I believed in. I mentored young women trying to break into business and technology. I lived. And on March 15th, 2025, 7 years after my second chance began, 1 year after the anniversary of my death, I stood on my balcony with a glass of wine and watched the sunset paint the city gold. My phone rang, an unknown number. Vivian Chen, I answered. Miss Chen, this is Detective Morrison with the police department. I'm calling about a Margaret Chen. She's listed you as next of kin. My stomach dropped. What happened? There's been an incident. She's at City General Hospital. The doctors think you should come. I drove there in a daze, my mind racing. Margaret had never listed me as anything before. Why now? The hospital was sterile and cold. I found Margaret in a private room, hooked to machines, her face gray and drawn. A doctor met me outside. Miss Chen, I'm Dr. Patel, your stepmother. Your stepmother suffered a severe stroke. The prognosis isn't good. She's stable for now, but the damage is extensive. She's been asking for you. Asking for me? She's been quite agitated. Keeps saying your name. I entered the room slowly. Margaret's eyes tracked me, and I saw something in them I'd never seen before, fear. Vivian, she rasped through oxygen tubes. Margaret, she coughed, wincing. I need to tell you before. Tell me what? I'm sorry. The words came out choked, painful. For everything. For Maya, for your father. For the McKinsey job, I knew. I helped her. I thought. Another cough. I thought it was just a prank, just putting you in your place. I didn't think. You didn't think what? My voice was ice. That it would matter, that I would care, that my life and my career were important? Tears leaked from her eyes. I was jealous. You were so smart, so driven. Maya was my daughter, and I wanted her to have everything, but she wasn't like you, wasn't as talented. So, I helped her take from you instead of helping her build her own path. I stared at this broken woman who'd done so much damage. And now? I asked. Now you're sorry? Now that you're dying? Yes, she whispered. Please, forgive me. I thought about it, genuinely considered it. This woman had enabled my destruction, had actively participated in it, had taught her daughter that stealing and lying were acceptable if it served their interests. No, I said finally. I don't forgive you. You made your choices, Margaret. You chose cruelty over kindness, jealousy over fairness. You chose to hurt me when you could have helped me. These are your consequences. Please. I hope you find peace, I said, but you won't find forgiveness from me. I left the room, left the hospital, left Margaret to face her mortality alone. Some might call it cruel. I called it justice. She died 3 days later. I didn't attend the funeral. Maya called me a week after Margaret's funeral. I almost didn't answer. What do you want? I asked when I finally picked up. I, her voice was hoarse. I heard about Mom. I thought you should know. The funeral was nice. Small, but nice. Okay. Silence. Vivian, she took a shaky breath. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you so badly. And I realized Mom raised me to think I deserved whatever I wanted. That if I wanted something you had, I should just take it. That you were lesser somehow, and it didn't matter if I hurt you. She laughed bitterly. Pretty fucked up, right? Yes. I can't undo what I did. Can't give you back the years I took. But I want you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did to you, and I'm sorry. Genuinely sorry. I sat with that for a moment. Maya sounded different. Older, more self-aware. Whether it was genuine or another manipulation, I couldn't tell. Thank you for saying that, I said carefully. But it doesn't change anything between us. I know. I needed you to know. Okay. Another pause. Are you happy? She asked suddenly. In your life now, are you happy? I thought about my penthouse, my career, my freedom. I thought about the life I'd built from ashes and second chances. Yes, I said. I am. Good, she said. And she sounded like she meant it. That's good. You deserve that. You always did. We ended the call with no promises of future contact, no plans to rebuild our relationship. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be repaired, and I was okay with that. 5 years later, I stood in the same ballroom where I'd held that charity gala preparing to give another speech. This time as the newly appointed CEO of Pinnacle Corp's global operations. The youngest person and first woman to hold the position in company history. My speech was about perseverance, about second chances, about building systems that rewarded merit over manipulation. I talked about my journey from Singapore to here, carefully editing out the parts about rebirth and revenge. In the audience, I spotted my father, gray but healthy, smiling proudly. We'd rebuilt our relationship slowly, painfully, but genuinely. He'd worked hard to understand his failures, to make amends where he could. I didn't see Maya. I'd heard she'd started a small business, something with graphic design. Apparently, she was doing okay, not thriving, but surviving, learning to stand on her own without stealing from others. I hoped that was true, not for her sake, but for the sake of anyone else who might cross her path. As I delivered my speech, I felt the weight of 2 lifetimes on my shoulders. The girl who'd been destroyed and the woman who'd risen from those ashes. Both were me. Both had shaped who I'd become. Someone once told me, I said, reaching the conclusion of my speech, that the best revenge is massive success. I disagree. The best revenge is building a life so full, so meaningful, so authentically yours, that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. That's not revenge, that's freedom. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, after the photographs and congratulations and champagne toasts, I returned to my penthouse. I stood on the balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights sparkle below. March 15th, 2030. 12 years since my second chance began. 12 years since I'd woken up with memories of betrayal and a hunger for justice. I'd gotten that justice. I'd built an empire from the ruins of my first life. I'd made sure Maya and Marcus and Margaret all faced consequences for their actions. But more importantly, I'd built a life I loved. A life that was mine, earned through hard work and strategic brilliance, and the kind of determination that comes from having everything stolen from you once and refusing to let it happen again. My phone buzzed with a message from my father. Proud of you, sweetheart. Your mother would be too. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. In my first life, I died alone, unloved, destroyed by the people who should have protected me. In this life, I'd learned to protect myself. And that made all the difference. The city spread before me, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere down there, Maya was building her own life, learning her own lessons. Somewhere, Marcus was probably regretting every choice that had led him away from significance. Somewhere, Margaret's ghost was, hopefully, at peace. I raised my glass to them all, to the villains who'd made me stronger, to the second chance that had saved me, to the woman I'd become through fire and determination. Thank you, I whispered to the universe, to whatever force had given me another shot. Thank you for letting me win this time. The wind carried my words away into the night, and I stood there until my wine was gone and the city had fallen quiet, feeling more alive than I ever had in either of my lives. I had let Maya steal my interview, and she had panicked when I became her boss. But that had only been the beginning of the story. The ending? The ending was me standing on top of the world, free, and that was worth everything.